Welcome back to the Let's Talk Universal podcast, where we interview industry experts and thought leaders about their specialist topic as it relates to the workforce and how they're helping organisations to optimise their people function. And today I'm joined by Tom Sherwood, founder and CEO of Koios. Welcome, Tom.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
And am I saying that right? Koios?
Yes, correct.
Great stuff. So I think we should begin by kind of introducing yourself. Would you mind introducing yourself to the audience and maybe summarize what it is that you do?
Yeah, of course. I'm Tom, co-founder and CEO of Koios. We have been running the company now for about 4 years, but actually came out of stealth about 18 months ago. Prior to that, I spent 13 years in talent acquisition, big tech, so Apple, Spotify, Snapchat as an example. We are on a mission to understand humans at a deeper level by using voice as our kind of means of analysis.
Sounds great. Super interesting stuff. And we're going to be talking about psychometrics, which was a new term to me. So I just wanted to make sure that for our audience, we kind of defined that. Would you mind kind of explaining, what the term psychometrics means?
Of course. So psychometrics in its simplest form is the theory of measurement of psychology. So it's essentially adding quantitative data points to a qualitative subject.
And so it's like personality kind of profile.
Yeah, personality, behaviour. I mean, the traditional methods, almost everybody, I assume, listening to this would be aware of. So self-assessment, personality assessments. It's any form of measurement or assessment to be able to measure psychology.
Awesome stuff. I'm glad we sorted that, because for myself, I was like, I don't really know what psychometrics means. So I'm glad we sorted that. But can you tell us how Koios started? Where did it begin?
Yeah, of course. So it started with the idea, the genesis 4 years ago. I was working talent acquisition at one of the large technology companies, and they were looking to bring personality and psychometric testing into the interview process. There's numerous reasons for that. I mean, understanding the psychological makeup of an individual and utilising psychometrics in hiring is incredibly valuable. I mean, an example of that would be US Special Forces, where high performance is absolutely necessary, and they're looking for the absolute top 1%. They use psychometrics and psychological testing during their selection process, because once you understand the human at a far deeper level and kind of decode the person, it allows better understanding of the individual, by performance, better coaching, better learning, and also then you can match up individuals. But going back to why we started it was there's a huge value to getting these insights, but the actual method and the process of getting this information is expensive, it's time consuming, and the candidate experience is ultimately terrible. So imagine during a hiring process, you're headhunting people from SpaceX, from Google, from DeepMind, from OpenAI, and then they go, oh, by the way, can you now spend the next 45 minutes answering 100 questions about whether you like to be the life and soul of the party? It's just not very enjoyable for the candidate, and also there's numerous reasons such as fixed questions in psychometrics, in personalities specifically, can be reverse engineered, and you can start to answer the questions on how you think you want to be perceived.
Yeah.
So imagine you're going for a job in sales. Your assumption is I should probably be an extrovert. So when these questions come up, you go, of course I'm a life and soul. I'm always thinking of new ideas. You kind of consciously or unconsciously start to answer it in a certain way. So I saw there was numerous issues with the method of doing this, and read some academic research papers about the leap forward in what's referred to as computational social science, which is the application of data science and sociology, and how via technology you can start to predict someone's personality from initially their digital footprint. So a lot of the social media businesses now are able to look at how you react on social media, whether that be likes, comments, scrolling time, So there's thousands of data points they have on you, and they can predict your personality from your digital footprint. But obviously, we didn't want to do that. That's quite invasive when it comes to hiring. So we wanted to provide a better way, and because of the immense acceleration in interview platforms for over video, so digital interviews, we worked out, well, if there's a way in which we can analyse the voice to produce these insights, that would be the best medium for that. So myself and Martin, my co-founder, Martin is the genius behind this. He's got a PhD in computational social science. We started working the problem, and over a period of about 2 years, we bootstrapped the research. In the summer of 22, we had quite a significant leap in our technical capability that allowed us to predict personality using the Big Five theory, which, for those who don't know, is openness, conscientiousness, agreeableness, extroversion, neuroticism. And we can predict those 5 personality or the levels of those personality traits from just 90 seconds of speech. And that's where we are today.
That's it. That's incredible. And obviously there's a technical side to that, but I myself have been through personality tests, kind of trying different ones out, what the experience was, what the results were, and several of them, I actually did them twice because I found the same thing that you were saying a moment ago, which was about, you kind of answer the questions based on how you want to be perceived versus the actual truth of the answer. Like, you got kind of 2 different outcomes from that.
Yeah, so there's with regard to validation, you have something called test retest, and this is where, I mean, I assume most people would have heard of Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs often fall down on the test retest, and people are welcome to research themselves. But the issue with tests such as Myers-Briggs is they put an individual into a box of A or B. So you're either introverted or you're extroverted, and any form of assessment will aggregate your score and essentially give you a percentage or a 0 and 1. So if you were to take a Myers-Briggs assessment today and you are who you are, and you would score 49% on the part that's assessing extroversion, you would be an introvert. You can do the same test again tomorrow, or in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks time, and just by having a slight change or answering a question slightly differently, you can have 51%. There's only 2% swing. And as far as their assessment is concerned, you are the complete binary opposite of what you said you were. So all of your insights, all of your advice will change overnight, which is why psychologists and behavioral scientists very much prefer the Big Five form of psychological theory, because the Big Five works on a sliding scale of between 0 and 1. So you're not low or high or introverted or extroverted. You will be between 60 to 70% this, or between 10 to 20% this. So it's a lot more variable, because ultimately personality is not exact science.
Yeah, well, this is true. Yeah, and I think, as you say, on a day-to-day basis, sometimes, you might feel or behave slightly differently to another day. So, that there is a variable in personality. But when we start to talk about kind of organizations and the challenges that they're facing when it comes to acquisition and retention, what do you see as the biggest challenges that they're facing, and how does Koios then help to solve those problems?
I think there's numerous applications. I mean, I'll start on an individual level. So as an individual, my earliest memory of the use of psychology, without even really realizing it, would have been at school, where I had some teachers who really got through to me and were able to have massive impacts on my learning, and then some that just didn't. At the time, as a teenager, you assume you have good teachers and bad teachers. But actually what it was the ability for those teachers to tune into how you learn and how you listen and how you communicate. And I'm sure we've all experienced this in personal life, in education, and then through to business life. People react to different methods and different communication strategies. For example, sometimes for me, I think I need an arm around the shoulder and someone saying, "Oh, come on, you can do better." But actually, if I'm really honest, I need to be taken to a room and have someone shout at me with their finger in their chest, because that's how I respond. Being held to account and being called out when it's not good enough and being quite blunt with me works really well for me. So from a performance perspective, as a manager, you think, oh, well, I'll just put my arm around Tom and then I might perform, but I'll probably still only perform at 70 or 80%. If I'm taken to a one-on-one and really dragged over the coals, as long as it's constructive, I'm going to buck my ideas up and perform a lot better from that perspective. So on an individual level, I know that I can perform better if I understand myself. My manager knows that how to communicate with me. And then obviously on an organizational level, use the psychometrics. If you know the personality of each individual in your team, you can then look into that team and then provide kind of group insights. So a manager knows on a group level, how do I get these people to gel? How do I get them to work well together? I've got someone who's really creative and they're full of new ideas, but probably lack attention to detail and structure. And that's a personality trait. That is a behaviour you can get better at, but deep down, that's who you are. And then you partner them up with someone who is incredibly detail orientated, incredibly disciplined, but probably lacks that creative mindset. If you know that these two people have these personalities, therefore the advice is get those two to work together because they're going to complement each other's core personality types, which will allow to high performance. And at the end of the day, every organization is constantly fighting a battle of whether it be 5 staff, 500, 5,000, 50,000 staff of, well, my staff are probably my biggest cost. How do I enable an environment and a scientific approach to drive higher performance and get the most out of my investment, which is my people?
Yeah. And I really like this idea of kind of working with the strengths and weaknesses, quotes.
Yeah. Growth areas, we like to say.
Yeah, that's a better way of putting it. So let's use that. Growth areas of, each individual in your team. And I suppose when it comes to if there's a vacancy within a team, it's also understanding what type of personality you're looking to recruit into the team as well.
I mean, I'm actually going to probably disagree with that. I don't feel that organisations should use personality for selection. So it shouldn't be, okay, we have a team of 10, one person's left and we are missing this particular kind of personality, because then you inherently start hiring a bias. And you say, well, I'll only hire this. I'm only going to hire an extrovert. I'm only going to hire someone with a high level of conscientiousness. It's more about in hiring of, well, this is who I have and this is how I utilize that team. I think if you're working on like project basis, so members of staff is like, okay, we're working on a particular project to launch into a new region or a new product launch. You can then start to look at optimal team makeup based on personality and psychology, and there's numerous methods to do that, which I'm sure we'll come on to later. Deep down, we fundamentally disagree with the use of psychometrics for selection. It can be used in hiring to allow that hire to flourish, but you shouldn't discount or select someone based on their personality, because then you're literally, like, your personality is who you are, and that is fixed from kind of teenage years through to later. Your personality is fixed. Your behaviour can be learned. But the personality is relatively fixed. And if you were to find out you didn't get a job based on something you can't control, and it is who you are, that's a bit of hot water you probably don't want to get into.
Got ya. And that makes complete sense to me. And yeah, as you say, it becomes a tool of how you optimize an individual, not kind of select and I suppose in some ways it would be a different form of, as you say, bias in the recruitment process that we just don't need to include. So no, that makes complete sense to me. And when it comes to the psychometric insights that Koios kind of pulls from, is it just voice? Are there other things that it can tap into, like maybe written interviews?
So we focus on voice because it's such a rich source of data. So when we analyse voice is obviously incredibly complex. You have two main parts of voice, which is the linguistic and the acoustic makeup you speak. So that thing that your parents told you when you were growing up, it's not what you say, it's how you say it, is absolutely true. And that is what gives us the data to be able to predict personality. There are other companies out there who use facial recognition which we will not go anywhere near. We think it's incredibly questionable because of the amount of bias potentially involved, like the data training and the data sets around that when you're doing facial recognition. Or, for example, you and I are talking now. Behind you, I can see that all of your books are in a particular color order. That says something about you. So you're going to take that into account when you're doing facial recognition, because actually the environment you're in probably reflects you as well. So that's why I wouldn't go into personally. I wouldn't go into facial recognition. And then you have, I mean, there are ways by using natural language processing. If you were to write your autobiography without any editors at all, there's going to be a pretty big signal from that about who you are as a personality. But then it's a limit of how much data do you need and the context. I mean, you could be talking about, I don't know what particular sports teams, or just going for a walk and chatting about the trees. It's like, well, because of voice, we can analyze that and actually provide insight based on it. But if it was just you got back and then just wrote 100 words about what trees you saw, it's like, well, how can you assess someone on that? Whereas the way in which you said it is a lot deeper than just the transcript itself.
Yeah, I find that so interesting. And actually, as you say, the voice seems to be the maybe more reliable source of personality in a way that wouldn't include any kind of bias. So it's interesting that you've focused on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, because it's a medium of communication that almost everybody in the world uses. Obviously, there's sensibilities and accessibility that we obviously respect, and there's always going to be a place for other methods to allow everybody to be assessed or understood fairly. But predominantly, everybody speaks in some way, and the way that we've trained our models is when it comes to variables. Within that, you obviously have different languages, different dialects. But that's why we were super conscious that when we trained our models, that we captured all of this data, and we had the demographic data of every single person who is given us their data. We actually pay individuals to train our model. So we know exactly who they are, their background, their dialect, all the characteristics, and we can look at the performance of our models in certain areas, and we can then kind of handicap or elevate certain parts of the model if it's underperforming certain demographics.
Right, okay, yeah. So I want to go back to something we were talking about, which was kind of psychometric insights in the hiring process. Now, obviously, as a way to target kind of people that you want to bring into your audience, into your organization, probably not the way to go. But how can it help hiring managers in the recruitment process, potentially into the onboarding process as well?
I mean, I spent 7 years in a recruitment agency when I first started my job, and a world-class agency, one of the leaders in what they do, incredibly highly regarded. And when I was there, the massive focus was candidate is king. So the candidate is the most important person in this process. If you have good candidates, you understand your candidates, the clients will come. Which was very much the place where I was trained. So I always had a focus on the individual as a candidate as the most important part of the process, or the most important aspect of the hiring process. And ultimately, by understanding that individual, that was what made the hire. So what I mean by that is skills can be taught. Humans are humans, and it's very easy especially as a junior hiring manager, and someone hasn't hired before or very quite early in their, oh, well, I just really like that person. I think we'll get on really well, so I'm going to hire them.
Yeah.
So that will drive on the surface as a quick win. Oh, well, yeah, we can get them on board. I like sport. They like sport. We both went to the same college or whatever. So they're going to be, is that a good hire, or is that just a friend you're hiring? And which one leads to higher performance? And I think the use of psychometrics in hiring essentially allows hiring managers, leaders to say, look, I can see from this person's background, they have exactly the background we need. They have, they've achieved so much already in their career. They have huge potential, but they're very different to me. It gives them the confidence to go, I know they're different to me, But I now know exactly how to communicate with them. I know how to motivate them. I know what makes them tick. I know what their growth opportunities are. I know how they're going to collaborate with each individual. I know how they're going to make decisions. It's essentially it's a cheat sheet. It's a cheat code for every single person. So when you have that panel of 5 or 6 candidates and you go, oh my God, that person is incredible. I don't think we're gelling at the moment yet, but I now know how we can gel and how I can make them perform. I mean, I'm sorry, but why wouldn't you want that information? Or do you go, okay, well, there's someone here, I just think we're going to get on. They might not be as good on paper and maybe then they don't have the right experience, but we're going to get on really well. It's probably the easy option, so we'll hire them. I mean, if you really, really, really dig into this, how many people have taken the easy option? And the easy option doesn't lead to high performance. It might make them feel good and make them happy and think, oh yeah, my team really gel together. But is that team performing at its full capacity, or is it just a really nice team?
And so when we then move past the hiring process, how then does it help companies to better understand their workforce better? Because, we've spoken quite specifically about teams, but how does it then transform into kind of understanding the workforce and optimizing the workforce?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's numerous ways to do this. And I mean, first of all, how do you define a workforce? Do you define that as individual teams, teams on teams? So, do you know what I mean? It's a big question in itself. I think ultimately you have to start at the top when you look at the kind of psychometric diversity or the personality diversity. And it was interesting. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk, especially over the past few weeks, about organisations are pulling the plug on their DEI initiatives. So Microsoft last week announced that they are stopping all DEI initiatives because they're not seeing the ROI on it. And at the end of the day, C-suite and organisations, they have an element of reporting, and their sole purpose is to drive value for their shareholders. That is how a business works. You're not a charity. You're a profit-making organisation. Those profits lead to growth, etc., etc. And there's been a lot of talk about DEI, especially over the past kind of 4 or 5 years since McKinsey released those reports early on in COVID about how a diverse team leads to better profits and better revenue. But all of those reports were a lot deeper than what meet the eye. So what I mean by that was a lot of it was taken, and the easy option of a lot of organisations was, okay, we know that if we have a diverse team, then we're going to drive our profits. So they went, okay, well, we're going to go and hire loads of people who look different. And then went, oh, well, why aren't the profits? I thought it was as simple as that. But it's clearly not as simple as that. Diversity is not just identity. Diversity is diversity of education, diversity of socioeconomic background, diversity of experience, diversity of personality, diversity of thought, diversity of journey travelled. Journey travelled being if you went to boarding school, then to Oxbridge, and then grad scheme at Accenture, and then into a strategy role in the business, that journey is very short. How many steps have they actually taken? Where if someone was from a particular country and was then became an orphan and then travelled the other side of the world and then joined a different family and learned a different language, they then went to school. They went to a state school, dropped out of that school, went to another school, then went to college and was sofa surfing because they couldn't afford to go to college, and then ended up getting into university, or even not going to university and having an internship, and then finally becoming an expert in their field. The journey is completely different. They might still both be on the same interview panel, but the journey in which they travelled is so different. And I don't particularly like the phrase lived experience, but the journey they've been on has defined them, and they have such different views on life and decision making. That is another aspect of diversity that needs to be taken into it, especially when it comes to creativity, project management, problem solving. Is if you have 6 people in a team who are all Harvard grads, etc., they're probably going to come from quite similar thought processes and quite similar perspectives on life because they've been in that part of life. Whereas having a diverse range of backgrounds and industry, from, as I said, different journeys, that is going to drive, and it's evidenced in that that is going to drive increased creativity, and obviously creativity leads to problem solving, which leads to increasing revenue and profitability. So that's, for me, that's how you start at the top. And if your board and your C-suite is diverse, not just by what they look like, we have to start looking beyond that and really understanding the individual and their story. And then you've obviously that then spreads across an organisation.
Yeah, and I think that lends itself to the neurodiversity conversation, because neurodiversity is that diversity of thought. It's that thought process that each person has a different way of thinking and working around problems, and is something that drives innovation and those kinds of outcomes that organizations are really trying to achieve by way of diversity. But as you say, the focus in recent years has been predominantly on these identity markers as opposed to the experience or even the personality and way of thinking of individuals within that organization. So I find that really fascinating. How exactly does Koios then help to facilitate that for organizations?
So I suppose because our models look beyond what somebody looks like, it goes into the personality of that person and the way their brain works. Because that's what we're looking at, and that's what we're identifying, and that's what we're giving insight on. It allows a manager to say, well, look, I have a really diverse makeup of my team because all of them think in different ways. I now know how to make them gel. And over the past 4 or 5 years, there's been huge progress around the increasing diversity of teams, whether that be through identity or through personality. And actually the challenge facing a lot of leaders now is, okay, well, I now have a relatively diverse group of people. They aren't just 5 white men who all went to Eton together. How do I get them to gel? Like I'm now struggling as a manager to get these individuals to work together. So we essentially decode that and say, look, you've got person 1, person 2, person 3. This is how you can get them to collaborate. This is how you can work with them. So that's around psychometric trait elevation, psychometric trait diversity is the 2 theories we put into a model, and we can now provide insights on a group level where you can have your team, you essentially create your team using our models, and then our model will produce insights based on the group, not individuals. So that's how we can decode that and allow managers to.
Digital twins simulation thing that we've spoken about?
Slightly different. So that's the personality trait insight. Sorry, that's the team insights model. We then have a digital twin simulation, which is around, obviously it's the personality, the team trait analysis and team trait insights is, this is your team and this is how you're going to work with them. Digital twin simulation is essentially that. It's a simulation of what could things look like. So you can essentially drag and drop different individuals into that team, as we're talking about projects earlier, or you put out launch or growth initiative or whatever you're doing. You can bring people into a digital twin simulation and then run them through some simulations of, okay, well, how would this group of people actually do this? How would they get on with this particular task? Okay, well, maybe if we take these 2 people out and add these 2 people in, how would that affect the result? So you can start to predict the outcome of team success based on that.
I mean, to me, that would be a really exciting thing to learn as even an organizational leader who perhaps isn't in HR, but actually, for HR or talent leaders, it's a way of aligning your programs with the business outcomes of the business. Like, this is one way to be like, okay, this is what we need, and so we need to go get it, and this will be the outcome.
Yeah, I think far too often, I think to your point you're saying about how the CEO speaks to HR, I actually think every CEO is HR, because their business are their people. And the best CEOs in the world understand that, and they understand their people that they're working with. I mean, you go to any VC, any startup accelerator program, and they say one of the most important things is how would you attract the best talent and how would you manage that talent. And I think famously, the founder of Gymshark openly admits that what he was brilliant at was surrounding himself with people who knew far more than he did. And so at the end of the day, the best CEOs are the people who can pull the best teams together. They don't solve everything themselves. What they do is they find and develop a team that can solve all the problems for them. So yeah, I think that's something that's really important, that if you surround yourself with good people, they're the ones who will solve the problems. And if your people are performing at a high level, or there's ways in which you can get an edge, then it will allow those teams to perform.
So I just want to talk about the technology piece, because I realise we've not actually mentioned how this can then be incorporated into an existing process, and technology for an organisation. How can they leverage this technology? Where can they put it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, of course. So we have literally just released our models a few weeks ago to the general public. We've been working on this, as I said, behind the scenes for a long time. From an interview perspective, from a recruitment perspective, we are we're on the product roadmaps, and we're in developing a number of the interview platforms. So whether it be the likes of Equitas, whether it be Willow, the Hire Guide, we will be integrating into their platform. So just during the interview, just as part of one of their core features, they'll be able to provide these insights to recruiters and hiring managers. We are, from a kind of team perspective, and those insights, and they're available through kind of bespoke projects. So we're building some bespoke projects for consultancy at the moment, and we will be providing these tools, or if there's any HRIS professionals or HR platforms or leaders that obviously would like to speak to us about how we can integrate our models into their existing stack. And the best way is just to reach out to us directly, and then we can speak to them about utilising our models, because obviously humans are so unique in themselves. We think that providing a one-size-fits-all solution to this probably isn't the best thing to do. Whereas what we can do is we can work with these organisations to provide AI solutions for them.
Great stuff. Yeah, I wanted to make sure that we talked about that. And so I guess looking towards the future, where do you see the intersection of AI, voice analysis, and the future of work kind of evolving? Do you see it growing from where you guys currently are?
100%. I'd argue that the world of people and talent and HR are probably the last ones to really grab hold of AI. I mean, if you look across any other industry, they're all using it through robotics or automation. I think we're still, as an industry, as a people industry, a little bit reluctant to trust the machine in certain instances. But I think the future is, first of all, just trusting it. And AI is not going to replace people functions. I think we have to make that very clear. What it will do is allow people functions to perform at a far higher standard. I see AI, especially within our field, being a tool to enhance human capability, not to replace human capability. And at the end of the day, every organisation is looking for efficiency. But at the end of the day, humans are the ones with the cognitive experience to do things. And if it means that you can allow technology to, I mean, most AI is used for automation to take away the admin tasks, the boring tasks, to allow the human to do more important things in their job when you break it down. So if we can use technology to allow those people to be more efficient and perform better and to be more successful, then organizations will be more successful. So that's where I see the future going.
Yeah, I'm completely aligned with that. I think up until now, a lot of people, and probably for a while yet, people are still anxious of AI and, it's going to take loads of jobs. But, I think at the end of the day, there's a real possibility, as you say, to enhance the job that people are already doing, not to remove them, but to, improve their overall performance in whatever role that they're, in HR maybe, or talent. And I just want to go back to those kind of modules that you were talking about a second ago. When we've kind of spoken, you said you have core, talent, and sales. Do you want to quickly explain the difference between those three?
Yeah. So core is quite a simple model. The outputs are relatively simple. We can analyze speech, voice, and then produce a big 5 prediction. And we literally just produce 5 numbers. So between 0 and 1 for openness, 0 and 1 for conscientiousness, etc. We then have Koios talent, which is built on top of the core. So we produce the prediction, and then we provide insights for hiring. So their communication skills, how do they communicate, how best to communicate with them, how not to communicate with them, how to motivate. So really actionable insights based on personality. Koios sales is quite exciting insight that we're producing. So during the sales process, if the individuals are using the likes of Jiminy or Gong or Glyphic, Sales Desk, any video or note-taking in the sales process, we're able to analyze the prospect and then produce insights on the prospect about how to build a better relationship with them. So sales, B2B sales is relationships, and then being able to build a relationship to understand the customer, understand their problems, and then build trust to be able to then provide a solution. We accelerate that whole process in the same way that a manager wants to understand their employee so they can deliver the right message at the right time. We allow sellers to understand their prospects to be able to deliver the right message at the right time. So that's our sales model.
I find that so interesting from, particularly for the sales is, managing customer relationships as well is super important for a lot of organizations. So I see that being really valuable. So that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And for the last kind of question, I like to kind of ask everyone if they had kind of a piece of advice for HR or people leaders, what would that be? So do you have kind of a piece of advice that you might give to HR and people leaders?
Difficult. I'll give advice based on my field of expertise rather than their field of expertise, because
Absolutely.
I would say just embrace technology. It's there to help. It's there to make things better. And at the end of the day, every organization is looking to improve and get better at everything they do. And why not use technology to allow your people to become better at what they do?
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, Tom, thank you so much for answering my questions today. And we will obviously share the links that you've provided us in the podcast description and also on our podcast webpage. But I've had a great time. I found it so interesting, and I hope our audience have as well. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.